Hey guys, welcome to another exciting video where I'll be showing you how to create a master machine and slave machines. Okay, we're using Vagrant, so we'll be doing all of this with Vagrant, and this is quite straightforward, very easy. So just pay attention and maybe follow along if you want to, and you will get this right. So the first thing we want to do is we'll create a folder where we want to put the master machine and slave machines in. So we'll put all of them in one specific folder. So let me just create a folder specifically for this purpose. You don't have to create the same folder. You don't have to do the exact same thing. If you already have like a folder on your system, maybe you have a folder called Vagrant or something where you store all of your machines, you can just create one new folder where you would put in all of the put in the master and boxes that like the Vagrant file for it. So I'll just do, let me just create a folder called Vagrant. Okay, and I'll just create another folder called I'll just create a folder called master Linux. Okay, and enter it. So there we go. So this is the folder I want to use to do this master and slave thing with Vagrant. All right, so the process to go about this is the same as before, with a little variation in how you would edit the Vagrant file. So instead of creating one VM and then you create another folder, and then you create another VM, and then you create another folder, and then you create another VM, we'll be doing all of this with one Vagrant file. One Vagrant file will control all of the boxes. All of the boxes, that's the master and the slave and the slave machines. So what we'll do is we'll create one master and two slaves. You can create as many slaves as you want, but remember that it is down to the kind of resources that your computer has. So if you're low on resources, I wouldn't suggest doing more than the master and two slaves at the most. Okay, if you already have existing boxes on your system, that you've created, and existing machines, I would suggest that you use VirtualBox. For example, you could use VirtualBox to stop them, make sure that they are not running. Let me see, do I have any? Okay, I don't have any. So if you have any, you could just use VirtualBox and stop all of them. The idea is that you don't want to have too many boxes running all at once, okay? So we don't want that to happen. So I will then, 1 second, let me try to launch my VirtualBox. So this is VirtualBox. Okay, so VirtualBox is coming up. Oh, sorry, you're not seeing it. So VirtualBox. I'm kind of using OBS, so I was only sharing one side of my screen. I was only sharing one app. Okay, so here we go. I just need like a second to pull this up. Okay, so all right, so this is my VirtualBox, and as you would see, my VirtualBox, there's nothing running inside. I don't have any machines. So if you have any machine already, just stop all of them within VirtualBox. Okay, so we'll go back to our terminal, and in our terminal we are going to create a new VM specifically, okay, a new Vagrant file. So we do the usual Vagrant init. I'm using Ubuntu. Okay, Focus 64. Okay, so you run that it creates the Vagrant file, and then as usual you edit the Vagrant file. So I'm using nano Vagrant file. There we go. Okay, now as you were doing before with a single machine, you would typically what you would have done is to go ahead and change the private network, to DHCP. But because we're doing a master and slave machines, you don't necessarily have to modify this. Okay, we'll be doing this for each of the machines, so that way you can even specify which machine should have a private network DHCP or static, or which one should have a static network, which one should have a dynamic IP, which one should have a static IP, which one should be public, which one should be private. Like, you can do all of that within the Vagrant file for each of the boxes. But I think the only thing I would want to change, again, in addition to the configuration that we'll do, is to change this. So I would want to, the reason I'm doing this is I want to limit how much resources the VMs are using, VirtualBox issues for each of the VMs. So I want to change the RAM. So I'll change this to, so this is 1 gig. So I'll leave it at 1 gig like this. Okay. And then I want to limit the number of CPUs. So CPUs, so you do vb.cpus, and then you set it, I'm setting mine to 2. So I should actually put this in quotes. Yeah, you can put it in quotes, it's fine like this way. So I'm setting it this way, and yeah, that's about that particular one. So now the next thing we want to do is to specify our machines. Okay, and if you follow the syntax, you get it. It's very straightforward. Okay, so just before this last end statement, so you will just go to the next line, just to keep everything in order, the same way everything, as you would see, all of this stuff, they're all on one line, they're all, doesn't matter. But I just generally like to, for easy readability, the hierarchy, the same way you would write things in Visual Studio Code, and you know that this is where this particular div started and this is where it ended. So we're just following the same standard here, so that things are very readable. So I will do this. So I'll just add a comment here. Multi machine, that's the other term for it. It's actually called multi-machine. Okay, when you're trying to do like master and slave in Vagrant, it's actually called a multi-machine setup. Okay, yeah, I just had to grab some liquid. All right, so the next thing we want to do is to specify, we want to configure our master machine. Okay, that's the first thing you should do. You specify the configuration for the master machine, and you just do this by typing config.vm.define. Be mindful of how you type this, because a syntax error would just mean that nothing will work. If you make any syntax errors, nothing will function. Okay, so I would like to call this machine, you can call yours master or whatever, but I want to paint the scenario of you having like a server farm, a server farm. So say you have like data centers all over the world, for example, and I'll just use Nigeria as a situation. So let's say the master server is in Lagos. So I would say, I'll just name this one Lagos. Yeah, just leave it as Lagos. Okay, Lagos. You can give it whatever name that you want. All right, subconfig, and then another pipe sign. So this is like a do while loop, and just so you know, this configuration file is actually in Ruby. It's actually written in Ruby programming language. So this is what Ruby kind of like, looks like essentially. So so I'll say sub config, then .vm.box equals, now I can specify what I can also specify, we already specified this. This is already specified at the top here. It's already specified here. So I can actually grade this out. I can comment this out because I'm already specifying I'm specifying it already per machine. Or I can leave this here. I can leave this, enable this, and not specify it in the sub config. Okay. So, but I'll just do this instead. So this should work just fine. Sub config. So I'm adding another config to specify the host name. Now, what is a host name here? So a host name is like a human translation of an IP address of that particular machine. Just like you have a domain name, for example, the domain name has an IP address behind it. It translates to an IP address. So the same way the host name translates to, essentially, it's like saying it's like the house number of where you live, or landmark of where you live, So I would say this, and I'll just leave the host name as Lagos. I'll still leave it as Lagos. I don't want to put too many different things, so I can leave it as Lagos. And then I can also specify the network type, subconfig, VM, network. So I want it to be a private network. Okay, and the type is set to DHCP, right? And then we end this. So I'll just type end. So this is the configuration for the master machine, right? So we've defined that the master machine should be called Lagos. Okay, so maybe I should let me do this. Lagos master. Okay. So that when I'm moving between them, you know what I'm doing. You would understand. So this is, I'll just leave it as Lagos master. I'll keep it this way. I'll name it this way for easy recognition. Okay. I know that Lagos is the master. All right. So I've specified here that I want the OS to be Ubuntu Focal 64. I want the host name to be Lagos master as well. I also want the network type to be DHCP. Okay. So now I want to configure the slave. The configuration is the exact same thing. It is the same. There's no difference. So what we'll do is I'll just copy this. Okay. And then I will paste it. Sorry. There we go. So I'll paste it. So can you see that it's still following the same line? So this is a master, and I'm going to change this to a slave. So let me do this as so I'm using Lagos as a master. So let me do Port Harcourt. Okay, so I'll do Port Harcourt. I can change this to Port Harcourt. Okay, and so this is a slave. So I'll just add one more slave. So I'll just paste the thing I had before again, and then change this to, I'll change this to, let's do Ibadan. And change this to Ibadan. Okay, so I have the master server is in Lagos, and the slaves are in Port Harcourt and Ibadan. Okay, so this is cool. I think I'm okay with this. So you can specify as many slaves as you want, but like I said, keep it to a minimum, especially if your computer isn't very powerful, so that you don't lock up your system resources. Okay. There's something cool again that you can actually do in addition to this. Just before we start up the VMs, you can also run some commands that they call it provisioning. So you can set up something that Vagrant will do as part of the provisioning process. So if, for example, you want to install NetTools, if you remember, if you want to install NetTools while the VM is being created, you can actually specify it here, and it's another very easy command, nothing complex. Okay, so let me just add a comment here. Provisioning scripts. So let me just do something like this. So I know I'm just adding this comment so that tomorrow when I come back to the file, I know that this is what I have done here. That's the essence of writing comments. Okay. So to specify what Vagrant should do when it's starting up, so you do something like config.vm.provision. So that's what this command does. It's actually a provisioning command, and it's run in a shell. Okay, so shell, and it's run inline. And the reason we're doing this is that when, for example, Vagrant tries to run the script, it will run it as if you are the one doing it. Okay, so this is how you write it. Shell, all right. So I want it to, let's say I want it to install NetTools. So I'll say sudo apt. I can do sudo apt get yes install NetTools. Then you end the statement. So this is a script. So this is the complete script if I want to install NetTools. The most important thing here is this line, this first line, and this last line. Whatever you put in between here is what Vagrant will execute on your behalf. But also, again, be mindful whenever you are, whatever thing you are trying to do here, for example, so you see, like this, for example, now the reason I added sudo is that I don't want a situation where Vagrant tries to install NetTools, and then because maybe the user is not a sudo user, it now fails or it stops midway because it's expecting me to add a sudo command, or it's expecting me to confirm. So this is a very good example. So you see this dash, this hyphen y flag means yes. If I don't add this flag, what then happens is Vagrant will provision the system, but when it gets to installing NetTools, it will freeze, because when you're installing something without specifying a yes flag, it means that you're expecting it to ask you, do you want to install this thing? So if it doesn't find the yes flag, it will keep waiting for you. And because when Vagrant is provisioning, it's not interactive. It's not going to, Vagrant is not going to ask you, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? It's going to do it silently. So it's going to be executing things on autopilot. Basically, that's the whole aim of all of these scripts and all of these things we're writing here. It's going to do it on autopilot. So you cannot afford to forget to silently pass or allow a script to run without interaction, basically. So this is for this. Let's say I want to install another thing again. I'll show you how to do. So I have some preset stuff I want to do. Let's say I want to let's say I want to, oh yeah, one more thing we need to install. We need to install a DNS utility. So the aim dynamic domain name system. So the aim of that is that DNS system. The aim of it is it would allow you to connect. So all of these slave machines will be able to interact with each other. Without that DNS system, they will not be able to interact with each other. So for example, if you SSH into Port Harcourt, you will not be able to SSH into Ibadan because it cannot find it. So that's the essence of that DNS stuff. Okay, so we need to add it. That one is very, very necessary. We need to add it. So let's add it now before we forget. So config is just the same syntax. Config VM provision shell inline colon less than hyphen shell, and then in the next line we specify what we want to install. So sudo apt get install, say yes, avahi daemon, and then there's an additional library called libnss mdns, and then we end the shell scripts. So this is what we need. This is for the DNS. This is the tool we need for the DNS to work. So remember, please add this, install this script so that you'll be able to interact between the different slave servers and the master. Okay, so the reason we're doing it here is because we don't want to have to start doing it for each one of them. What if you were asked to provision like 100 servers, for example? Are you going to start installing this one by one on each server? No. So the essence is to put it in the script so Vagrant does all of the work while you sit down and grab a cup of juice like myself. Okay, that was chilling. All right. The next thing we want to do, what else can we possibly do? We can even do something very cool, which you probably didn't think was possible. So let's say we want to create user groups with the script. It is possible. Surprised? Of course it is possible. So let's do this. Let's create a user group. Some user group. So config VM provision. Oops, we forgot something here. Can you see? Dot provision. So please see, if I had saved this and run it, by the time it gets to this 2, it would execute this one fine because there isn't any syntax error with this one. So this one will work, but it will get to this one and fail, get to this one and fail. Okay, and it will actually fail with the master, and once it fails with the master, it will stop. because there's an error in the Vagrant file. So it will not even continue at all. It will not even create the slaves. So inline, okay, and let's add this, and then shell. So we want it to create some user groups. So let's do sudo group add. Let's create the support user group. Remember this. I'm not going to create the admin because we already know that that admin, Vagrant is already creating it by default. So we don't want a situation where the command just fails. It tries to create admin and then it comes and says admin already exists, and then it ignores the rest of the script. And sudo group add engineering. Okay, so this, and then we terminate we close that particular statement. So that's it. If I wanted to add a user, now it's very easy. I can also create a user. Okay. So config.vm.provision, then shell inline shell. Okay. So sudo, I'll just create only one user. Sudo user add, create a home directory, make the primary group of that user admin, or no, yeah, we can just, let me just use admin. You can use support, you can use engineering, whatever you want. It's up to you. I want to give that user a bash shell, and I'll just call the username administrator, and then terminate this statement. Okay, so that's it. And yeah, that's all you need to do actually. So let's say we are okay with this. So you can see, I'll just zoom this out a little. So you see, this is our script, our provisioning script. These are all of the things we want to do while Vagrant is starting up the VM. Okay, so we'll just cross check it one more time for any errors. Hopefully there's no error. So all of this looks fine, right? Yeah, all of this looks fine. I don't think there's any error. So sudo apt-get install. Yes, Avahi daemon. Daemon is D-A-E, not D-E-A. So be careful with that. Okay, so all of this, yeah, all of this is fine. Okay, so let's save this. So Control O, then enter, then Control X to exit. Now we have finished configuring our Vagrant file. The next thing is to install. So Vagrant up. Ooh, there we go. So it says there's a syntax error. It says line 104, expected end of inputs, expecting end. Ooh, yeah. So there's one of the ends is missing. One of the ends is missing. So you see what I said, and it is, let's see which one is missing. There should be an end after all of this. So there's an end here, there's an end on this, there's an end on this. Okay, that's weird, because there are no line numbers. So I'll say go to line 104. That's weird. Okay. So I think one end is missing. That's a strange one. Let's check. So we have config vm provision shell inline sudo user add g. Even this is actually wrong. So this should be usr bin bash administrator. Okay. It cannot be this end. It cannot be this. Last I checked. It cannot be this because yeah. So let's save this. Let's see. There we go. All right. So do you know what the problem was? The problem was, first of all, the typo in that USR, in the user thing that we did, the bash path, and then the actual error was there was an empty line space at the end of file. In fact, we should have noticed it here when it said can't find string shell anywhere before end of file. So that's the end, that's the last line. There was an extra space which shouldn't have been there. Okay, so now our Vagrant is starting up. Here we go. So you see it's creating a master. It has created Lagos master and it is executing the scripts. So you see it is installing NetTools and the DNS, and you see this running inline script. These are the use. This is one of this is the user group, and the other is, so this is the user group. This is the user itself. It's an inline script, so that's why you're not seeing any output, but that's essentially what's going on. It has created them. If there was an error, it would show the error immediately. So now it's creating Port Harcourt. And you see setting host name. So it's creating Port Harcourt. And then it's going to repeat the scripts again. The provisioning is going to repeat all of them for each machine. So this should be done in a bit. If your system has lower processing power, it might take a bit longer, you know, okay. But if you have a more powerful system, it'll be quick, just like mine. So now it's creating the third one, which is Ibadan. Installing NetTools. And there, it's done. It's done. So I can even check the Vagrant global status. And there you go. So you have master, you have Port Harcourt, you have Ibadan, and you see that they are all in the same folder. Okay, they're all inside of the same folder. It's the Vagrant file is just inside the same folder. All right. If I want to SSH into Port Harcourt, for example, I can just use the I can use the ID, or I can use the name of the VM. I can say Vagrant SSH Port Harcourt. There we go. So this is Port Harcourt. We're now inside. Okay, you can see it, Vagrant at Port Harcourt. Okay. If I wanted to ping, now I'll show you the essence of installing that DNS, that MDNS that we installed. So if I wanted to ping Ibadan from inside Port Harcourt, so I will do ping Ibadan.local. Okay, remember to append this .local, so you can see it's pinging Ibadan.local. Okay, running a response, which means it's working fine, which means that it can find Ibadan. If we did not install the MDNS, this ping, for example, will not work. The aim of a ping is it checks, it tries to, it's just like you're shouting, you're trying to call somebody's phone, rather, not shouting, part of it. It's just like you pick up your phone and you're trying to call somebody. If the person's phone number is off, you won't be able to reach the person. If the number is on, then you will start, it will start to ring. So this is like a ring. So it's rang the first time, rang the second time, rang the third time, and it just keeps ringing. Okay, till you cancel it. If I wanted to SSH into Ibadan, I can exit this and I do Vagrant SSH Ibadan. So I've left Port Harcourt, I'm entering Ibadan. Okay, so this is Vagrant at Ibadan. So I can exit this and do Vagrant SSH Lagos master. So this is Lagos. Okay, so you see you can create, this is how you would create a master machine and slave machines, and even add additional things that you wanted to do. For example, we specified that it should create some users, right? So let's just log into any of the machines. Let's go into Ibadan, for example. Let's do Ibadan. So we asked it to create an administrator user, right? So let's try to switch to that user. Sudo su administrator. Can you see administrator at Ibadan? Okay. Let's check the user groups. So sudo, so let me just do tail etc group. So you see, it created a group support and engineering, and we did all of this with one script. Okay, so all of the machines have these. So I can quickly show you just to prove. Let's go into Port Harcourt. Let's go into Port Harcourt quickly. Sudo cat. Yeah, let's just do cat. Group. So there you go. Support engineering. Okay. And let's go into Lagos master. And let's check the administrator users. So sudo cat etc pass. And you see administrator. And he has his directory and he has the bash shell. So this is how you can do like a bunch of things all in one, from your master to your slave and all of that. And with this, you can actually do, you can create like SSH keys and copy it between the machines so that you can easily move from master. You can easily SSH from the master to the Vagrant from the master to any of the slaves without exiting the master and then logging into the slave, and then you want to do something else on the master and then you're logging out and going, so you can just SSH between all of them. Okay, right. So yeah, so try this out and let me know what works for you.